Hey everyone, welcome back to Software Testing Mentor and RCV Academy. So this video is in continuation with the previous video, which is basically why I decided to move abroad and why Australia as such. So now this is continuation and I'll cover some of the steps that I took or how I moved to Australia. So there was a thought process when we talked about the why, and I had a thought process basically why it makes sense to move abroad. And then the next step was basically the how. So what I did as part of that whole transition and how I got the opportunity here. What were the steps I took? I'll cover all of that, all the journey right from the beginning from India to Australia. So the first thing that I started doing was basically as I was working in a product-based company in Pune. So the product-based division, if you would have experience with the product-based companies, they have the development centers at a particular location, and on-site is not a much of possibility as it happens in the service-based industry. For example, if you're working for Infosys, Wipro or any other service-based organizations, there are a lot of opportunities that you might get for the on-site visits, and once you go on-site, most of the people get the local opportunities or they get the visa, permanent residency, etc. So I tried to do that while I was in the particular product-based company, but those assignments were very less duration. So it was more of like month or 2 month assignment in the product-based division. That wasn't solving the purpose. So the next thing I started looking was outside, maybe just switching the company and switching to a particular organization that might help me in finding the opportunity abroad. As we know, that is very, very difficult option. So even if you are in the service-based industry, you work for years and years and you have to, unless until you are, into very niche technology or the technology which is in very high demand overseas somewhere, you won't be able to get those opportunities very soon. So that didn't work out very well. So what I thought, let's see the other options. So the other options were basically to get the permanent residency somewhere. So I started having a discussion with some of the colleagues and some of the team members who have already gone abroad and got to know that there is certain visa, which is basically permanent residency visa or PR visa, that many countries offer if you have skills and have some experience. So some of the countries that I figured out were Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Singapore, UK. So there were different visa programs in all these countries, but then most of the countries started stopping the permanent residency migration because of a lot of people have already been there. So the options that I was left with was Canada, Australia and New Zealand. Now, among these three, the nearest to my place was Australia. So in terms of the travel duration, etc. There were some countries in Europe as well, but then that was not my preference. So I decided to move Australia and started the permanent residency visa process. After the visa process, so the visa process takes quite a bit of time. So if you are very lucky, you might get it in like 4 to 6 months after filing. But usually if there are certain delays in your application, etc. So you start with a lot of documentation, start with all the process, and that usually took me like 12 to 15 months of the overall process to complete and get my permanent residency visa. Once you get the permanent residency visa, or once I got the visa, basically I started looking for the overseas opportunity while I was in India. And that is again very, very challenging. Unless until you move or you migrate to a particular country, finding a job from overseas is again challenging. I'm not saying that people haven't found it, but it is very difficult as such as compared to coming to the place and then start finding the job when you are in that particular country. So that didn't work well. So I decided to resign from my job in Pune. So I resigned from the job, then packed up everything and moved back to my hometown. So I was there at my hometown for 3 months almost there, stayed with the family, and then did all the packing and move finally to Australia. And this was without the job. So whatever savings I had, basically I just had those and transferred those into the account here. So you can open a bank account usually. If you have a permanent residency visa, you can open the bank account while you are in India. There are certain certain banks here that will allow you, and I think there will be similar things in other countries as well. So once you are a permanent resident or you have the visa, you can open the account and you can transfer amount of funds from India rather than carrying the whole amount with you. So I transferred that amount here to sustain myself for 2 to 3 months until I get job. So after transferring that amount, after staying with my family for 3 months almost, we decided, along with my kid and wife, we decided we'll make a move. We booked our tickets and we started our journey. So we traveled and we landed here in Australia. So it was without any sort of person that I knew here. It was complete unknown country to me. It was just the permanent residency visa that was the key thing that I had, right? Because if you're moving, it's always good to move with the most secure option that you can. And in terms of permanent residency visa, you know that you are moving with absolute security in terms of government support. All other supports you will definitely get, even in the local government support. So PR visa is something, the visa that you can think of when you are thinking to migrate to any of the country, right? So after we landed here, I didn't have any known contacts here. So accommodation was already booked when I was in India, and it was booked for a week. So I used Airbnb to book an accommodation for a week, and thinking that yes, we'll go there, we'll stay there for a week, because I did a research on some of the forums that you can come here and there are Indian groceries available where people usually advertise the accommodation or the shared accommodation that you can go ahead and look for. So Airbnb is anyways costly. So I booked for 1 week, and then after landing here, we looked for the actual accommodation from the grocery. So I started visiting groceries. The day I landed, just rested a little bit, went to grocery, had some conversation with the people, the Indian grocery guys who were there, and they were really helpful. So then and there, we were able to find the accommodation in 3 to 4 days, and from there I moved from Airbnb to the new accommodation. Once we got the accommodation, the next part was to figure out how to find job in this particular place. So we had certain savings, and based on the savings, we could survive for a certain amount of time. So after finding the accommodation, we started to settle a little bit. So like a couple of days, we just settled down, and then started just going through the groceries, talking to more of the people that we get on the street. And when we landed, it's absolutely safe place to be. It's nothing to be scared about, and I found it very welcoming and nice country to be. So even though I didn't knew anyone, absolutely the person whom I stay with at the Airbnb accommodation was really helpful. From there, anyone whom I went to and talked to about any of the things, be it your job or how to find job or how to find accommodation, people were really, really helpful. After settling down, the actual process started, which is basically like a job search process, which is after a week or two. After we landed here, we settled down, we had everything, how we are going to cook, and we arranged some of the stuff from the local groceries and all, and then the actual job process started. So this is the overall sort of a brief journey that I took. I know it was not very safe move. It was a risky move, but yes, in your life, you have to take some risky decisions. You have to take some balanced decisions. So I knew that there is a demand when countries provide you the permanent residency visa based on your skill set. You know that there is a skill shortage. Only then they will provide you those visas, right? So if you are dedicated, if you can take a little bit of risk, which in my case, I thought it makes absolute sense that yes, we'll go there, we'll stay there, and we'll try to figure out how things work there. And it initially takes a little bit of time to figure out your first job. So that took a little bit of time for me as well, and it was very stressful journey as well. But then it was all good. We were able to manage that time very well, and then transition into the job pretty soon. I would say like it took a couple of months, but yeah, couple of months is also okay when you can find something locally, when you are in a country for the first time and trying to figure out the job, right? So this was the brief journey, and in this particular journey, the next part is how I cracked the first job here. But before that, what I'll do is I'll cover a video on how I cracked first software testing job in India. So that will be more helpful for the freshers that are trying to get into software testing and automation job currently in India, and then maybe later in your career phases, if you're trying to transition or move to a different country, this video will definitely give you some sort of motivation, like moving abroad without any job, with the family, and then figuring out the way I have figured out. If you know even a single person in a country that you move, you are still in a better condition, right? So it will, the whole process or whole thought process behind creating this series is to give you some sort of confidence, and if you can get inspired with the journey that I have taken, and if you feel that if I can make it through and come and get settled here, then anyone basically who is watching this particular video, and if you are dedicated, you are very keen to learn new things, try new things, you will definitely be able to move along and pursue the dreams that you are looking for. So for now, I think that's all about my transition journey. In the next video, I'll cover how I cracked my first job in India, and then the next video will be how I cracked the first job here in Australia after landing. So that's all. I hope this was a helpful and motivational video for you if you're trying to pursue something, and will help you in some way or the other. So thank you very much for watching.